There's different paths that you can take with a meditation practice. There is more of the performance or athletic-based path where you're trying to improve the mind-body connection, your timing, your awareness. Caught up thinking that all meditation is the same, and it's really not. There's movement practices, sitting practices, standing meditation, breath work, philosophical training exercises that we do to help expand the mind and see things from different perspectives and be more strategic in our lives. Get involved today and make the move, make the commitment. It'll be one of the best things you've ever done. Just stay consistent with it.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson, and today we're joined by Jeff Patterson, who has over 36 years of experience practicing and teaching the meditative and martial arts. As the founder of Northwest Fighting Arts, Portland Tai Chi Academy, and the Yielding Warrior, Jeff emphasizes the transformative power of meditative and martial arts practices, particularly the yielding concept. In today's conversation, we're talking about incorporating the meditative arts into your life. Jeff shares his vast knowledge and experience as a guide on how to get started and how to create a meditative practice that will serve you in just about every way you can imagine, and perhaps some ways you haven't yet thought of. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I am looking forward to today's conversation. I'd love for you to share with listeners your journey. How did you become the Yielding Warrior? What took you kind of into this world?
Well, I've always, since I was a young guy, been interested in the martial arts. And so at a fairly young age, I got involved in the martial arts. And, at the time, I wasn't interested in meditation or Tai Chi or Qigong at all. I just wanted to be a good martial artist and really study that path. And I remember when I was about 19 years old, I was going to a boxing gym, and I was very much into Western boxing. I love the thrill, the sport, the challenge, the intensity. It was just something that really challenged me and made me focus. And so at a boxing gym, it's a lot different than your traditional style fitness classes, in that it's not one teacher in front of a group of students leading a group. It's usually 4 or 5 coaches running around the gym, and each one of those coaches may have a handful of fighters that they're working with. Well, at this one particular gym, I was really trying to get the attention of one of the coaches who had trained champions in both amateur and the professional arena. However, his fight card was full and he wasn't really taking on any new fighters. And so I followed him around for about 3 or 4 months. I'd always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there and work very hard and try to get him to notice me. And finally, after about 3 or 4 months, he started giving me some tips and showing me some stuff. And it was only about 2 or 3 weeks of getting to work with him when he said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I'm this 19-year-old kid who doesn't know much of anything, thinking, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And, I had a lot of respect for him. I started following the practice, and not only has it changed my life in many ways through the years, I've been very fortunate here at the Academy. I've had over 26,000 students come through the school in the last 30 years. And I've heard literally hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And that's what's made me so passionate about trying to get the message out there, writing my last couple books and creating my online and my teacher training program, and just trying to share this message with as many people as I can.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to dive in a little bit to when you talk about the meditative arts, listeners have heard in many different people, whether it's in their journey or expert advice of meditate, find some kind of meditation. What are the three types of meditation? Because I always say, like, the best kind is the kind, that resonates with you, that you'll do, right? That you'll practice. So let's talk a little bit, because you said you started kind of meditation and Tai Chi at the same time.
Hmm?
But let's talk about the different, we don't have to necessarily go sit in a cave somewhere, do we?
Not at all, and a lot of people think that, within the meditative arts, I always look at it as creating an evolving life practice. And there's 5 different paths that you can take with a meditation practice. There is more of the performance or athletic based path where you're trying to improve the mind body connection, your timing, your awareness, so it helps improve your performance. Then there's the therapeutic side of the practice, which is good for longevity and working through injuries and just bringing that body awareness. Then there's the medical side of the practice, which, all of Chinese medicine is based off of Qigong theory, which is a meditative art. Then there's the philosophical side of the practice, and then also the spiritual side of the practice. And so anybody coming to a meditation journey could follow any one or a combination of those paths. And a lot of time people, I think, get caught up thinking that all meditation is the same, and it's really not. There's movement practices, there's sitting practices, standing meditation, breath work, there's philosophical training exercises that we do to help expand the mind and see things from different perspectives and be more strategic in our lives. And so there's so many different ways that we can integrate these practices. I like breaking them down into kind of 3 categories where we have ritual practices, active practices, and philosophical practices. And the ritual practice is a time where you set a little bit of time aside every day, and it could be a movement practice or a still practice. It's where you're not listening to any audios, you're not watching any videos, and you're just turning your focus inward. Then there is active practices, and these are great because you can do them in 60 seconds or 2 minutes. You can do them when you're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store. And they're a way to bring our awareness back to the present and be in tune with our body and our mind throughout the day, because it doesn't really make any sense to have a meditation practice that you do every day and feel all at peace, and then the rest of the day you're stressed and discombobulated. And so having these different things to help us and keep us focused is very important. And then the last pillar is philosophical practices, and these can be both active or ritual based. And if you use these to help build your kind of strategy with the meditative arts, it really will help you be successful in the practice.
Can you give us an example of, active and philosophical, or how, and they, I'm guessing, could overlap, like you said, but
Yeah. So an example of an active practice could be something as simple as just counting out 10 deep breaths. It could be some spinal rotations or a simple movement practice, something that helps bring our awareness back into getting out of our cell phones and getting off of the screens and just kind of helping us stay in tune and in touch with ourselves. And then philosophical practices, this is one of the things that in my career I've been very passionate about, and I really enjoy the philosophical side of the training because it's so good for opening up your perspective and helping you see things from different angles. And, an example could be something as simple as making sounds to generate different kinds of energy and having a purpose behind that, or doing some kind of a mantra, or there's different sayings that we memorize. One of my old meditation teachers, he had me memorize the Tao Te Ching, which is a very famous book. There's 81 sayings in that. And it's, you go through these sayings and you start to see them and understand them, but you do them every day and you think about them. And, what you thought they meant a year ago means something totally different today. And so when you start to use these and really look deeply into them, they help you really open up your vision. And so you're not so narrow-minded and focused and thinking that everything is this one particular way. And so they're a very powerful part of the practice.
I love that. That's amazing. And I want to highlight, and I love that you said, the ritual practice is really important. It is a practice, and that's, setting, I call it sacred time, but however much time for whatever your practice is daily. But you're right. Some people are doing it like it's a checklist, right? Like, oh, I meditated this morning, and then that's it. And they don't think about any of it until the next day. So I love that you have the different pillars, and that it is a way of life, but it takes intention, especially to build and as if somebody hasn't started any of these practices yet, it may sound like, wow, that's a lot.
It really it's pretty easy to integrate into your life. I always tell new students when they come to the practice that there's, and through my career, one of the hardest things that I've had to face is how do I get people to see the value in this practice so they can make it part of their life and really
Right.
benefit from the training? And so I've come up with three questions or three thoughts that I have people think about that I feel like if they really put some time and energy into these, they can get more out of the practice and their chances of being successful are going to increase. And the first one is thinking about, why are you being drawn to the practice? Do you want to stay healthier into your later years to watch your grandkids grow up? Or maybe you're dealing with a stress disorder or having panic attacks and you want to learn how to overcome this. Or maybe you're an athlete and you want to improve your performance on the field. Whatever that is for you. And then not just think about that surface level why, but also think about, if you accomplish this, how is your life going to change from this day forward by doing this? And think about all of the positive ways that it's going to affect you. And then also flip the coin and think, if I don't do this, what are all the negative things that are going to affect me by not doing this? And this gives you a fuel to kind of help motivate you to stay consistent with the practice, which is the next important thing to consider. Because we're all human. We're going to get up one morning, maybe tomorrow, next week, or next month, where the alarm's going to go off and you're going to be, I'll just do my practice tomorrow. I'm going to get a little extra sleep today. And if you don't have a good reason to get up and look forward to this practice rather than thinking of it as a chore that you have to do all of the time, then you're never going to really get deep into the practice. And so understanding how important that consistency is really vital in your development with the practice. You develop this discipline and integrity and perseverance by doing this on a regular basis. And not only does this affect your meditation practice, but it also bleeds over into everything else you do in life. And then the third thing that I like people to consider is, you need to find a guide, somebody that can help you navigate these waters. I mean, I've been studying the meditative arts now for 36 years, and I'm still just a student learning all the time. And if you think that you're going to go onto YouTube and weed through the millions of videos out there, or find an app and think that you're going to get any kind of depth in the practice, you're kidding yourself. I've had students come in here to the academy that have been self-taught, and they've been studying 15, 20 years and have a fairly disciplined practice, but they're never any deeper than the surface level into their practice. And having somebody help guide you and show you the shortest path to accomplish what you want is really valuable. Our lives are short and your time is valuable, and having somebody help guide you along the way is essential. And so if you think about these three things, really having some kind of a depth in what your why is and understanding the consistency, having somebody support you and a guide to navigate the waters, you can really accomplish a lot in a fairly short amount of time.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. And that being said, also, I want listeners to really know you don't have to be practicing for 30 years to feel the impact on the rest of your life. Specifically, thinking about my listeners, the impact that meditative arts can have on pain and energy, right? Two big common themes, no matter what kind of autoimmune symptoms people struggle with. Um, People always, when they ask me, well, what did you do? How did you start to improve your health? And I didn't do one thing at a time, so it was a combination. But as far as really moving the needle in the beginning for me with my pain and energy was a dedicated meditation practice. I was definitely one of those people who thought I'm a bad meditator. I thought my mind should just be blank and I should sit there, and what meditation was. And so I love that you said, for me it was finding that first meditation guide, I like that word, that resonated with me, that offered a type of practice that felt doable at that time when I had a lot of pain and didn't have energy. And the impact that had on my sleep, my inflammation, my pain, all of it, my healing, because we can't heal if we're not getting good sleep, was there's no way we would be having this conversation now. I don't know. I would, if I were still alive, I definitely would not, be doing what I'm doing in life. So I love that you said that. I think we do it with everything else, right? If you want to, I live in Colorado, if you want to learn to ski, you're probably not going to just throw on skis and go down the mountain. You're going to have a guide. And so I think that's amazing advice, is to, get that guide for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you mentioned how it's one of the things that really helped you. A lot of times I'll see people and maybe they're dealing with a stress disorder like panic attacks or something, and they'll come and they'll say, yeah, every time I have a panic attack, I go practice my breathing strategy. And I ask them about their meditation practice, and they don't have one. They just try to use these breathing exercises to help with them when they have this attack. And,
Yeah.
kind of like saying, I'm hungry today, I want an apple, so I'm going to go plant a seed this morning.
Right.
You have to nurture it and you have to build a foundation in the practice. And that
Yes.
doesn't mean that it takes 6 years for you to see any benefits, because you'll see benefits from the first day. However, that consistency and that disciplined practice is so essential to really getting any kind of depth. And one of the most common things I've heard people say through the years is, I've tried meditation before, but it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind. And somewhere along the way, people got this misguided idea that in order to be good at meditation, you have to reach this state of nirvana and have nothing bother you. And, it couldn't be further from the truth. For the last 36 years, I've been traveling around the world training with some very amazing meditation practitioners. And I have never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. We're all
Well,
human.
that's
It
our
happens.
brain is wired that way. I guess your final thought will be your final thought, but until then, we're going to have things pop up for sure.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite meditation myth to dispel, because I had that story. I don't know where I got it, but I love that you said that. And I think that was one of the things that it intrigues me about you, is you incorporate, it's not all sitting meditation. Let's talk a little bit about moving meditation options, because I do think for some people, they hear the word meditation and their blood pressure increases. Stress goes through the roof, right? What are some maybe unconventional or interesting ways that people can incorporate meditation that they may not have thought of?
Well, in the meditative arts, there's movement practices like Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga and walking meditations, different things that you can do to get some movement going. And a lot of times, if somebody has a difficult time thinking about sitting in one place for 20 minutes, I'll recommend let's step into a movement practice like Qigong and get to that mind-body connection and learn how to tap into the breath and start learning how to circulate the energy in the body and make these connections. Because sometimes for those people who, like you said, get stressed out when they think about it,
Yeah.
doing a movement practice is an easy way to step into it. And it doesn't matter what meditation style you do, whether it's a movement or a still practice or breath work or whatever it is, there's basically 5 underlying foundational principles that you cultivate in any meditation journey. And so I like people to really have a clear understanding of these, because I feel that if you do, you can see how meditation can affect any area of your life. And they are regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. And briefly, I'll kind of touch on what I mean when I say these. So regulating the body is the easiest one to start with. And it's basically understanding your skeletal alignment, your muscular tension, and how that affects your energetic states. So for example, say that you've been sitting in front of your computer for 3 or 4 hours and you're feeling very depleted, and maybe your neck's getting sore. And then think about another time when maybe the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world. Well, these two different energetic states we're in 100% control of all day, every day. And so understanding how to regulate that is very important. When we start to feel depressed and our shoulders are rounded forward and we're hunching forward and we're breathing shallowly, just changing our physiology can help change that state. And then the next regulation is the breath. And the breath is a very deep topic. And in fact, Qigong is often referred to as the science of the breath, because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies. And because of that, we kind of broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of meditations that we can do to work with depression or anxiety or panic attacks or boosting our creativity. And an example of a yin breath would be if you ever listen to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so if we want to emulate that inward draw of energy in the body, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale to help bring that energy inward. Then we have the yang side of the breath, which is more aggressive. And an example of that would be if you've ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to exhale and put tension in the breath, make it audible. And this helps generate energy and power. And so when we understand how to use the breath as a strategy in our ritual and active practices, we can now regulate our physical, mental, and emotional well-being with our breath. Everybody goes through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some people may be more like a roller coaster, others may be a little more balanced. But when you start to see these imbalances and you start to get excited, we can use the yin side of the breath to help bring it back down. And we start feeling depleted, we can use the yang side to help build us back up. Then we have regulating the mind. And this is a very deep topic and something that you'll study for the rest of your life. We touched on this a little bit with distractions in meditation. And, say, for example, you're sitting for 20 minutes or doing a movement practice like Tai Chi, and you get distracted 50 times during that session. Every time you get distracted, if you recognize that imbalance and use your posture, your breath, your movement to help come back to focus, you just got 50 repetitions on how to be off center and coming back to balance. And if you do this every day, every month, every year, you start to develop this power and this ability to find that center and to be more focused throughout your day. There's this story that I really enjoy about these two old monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm, and they come up to this big mud puddle, and on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl standing there in a white dress, and she's crying. And the older monk, he yells across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." And so the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, drops her off, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road, and finally the younger monk is just furious, and he says, "We're not supposed to touch girls, but you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle." And how many times in life do we need to get two
Yeah.
miles down the muddy road before we realize of this imbalance and we need to let go of it? And so regulating the mind is a very important part of the practice. And then the fourth regulation, regulating the energy, is another extremely deep topic and something that we could spend hours on. But just a brief idea is, once we've reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, we now have the tools to circulate the energy in the body, to lead it inward, to extend it outward, to get different energetic expressions within our practice. And then the last regulation, regulating the spirit, is a very profound idea and something that meditation masters and monks will spend their entire life's journey working towards that ultimate stage of enlightenment. But when you understand these five underlying principles of the practice, you can see that a meditation journey can affect everything we do in life and is extremely valuable.
Amen. I want to underscore literally everything you said. And I think back to this idea that, our misconception of what being a good meditator is, it is just like you said, that ripple effect is invaluable. And I can't stress enough whether, and especially for listeners, I mean, even if I think there's this pattern that tends to happen with people that are fighting chronic symptoms where they start to feel powerless, or their body's not doing what they want, and meditation and learning to control what's going on in your body is so empowering. And then it becomes empowering just in life, right? Not just with how am I feeling. I always say it gives you a pause button. And to not, if you're somebody who tends to have a reactive personality, or even not, it just even still, even if you have a pause button, it gives you a longer one. It's that alternative perspective you were mentioning earlier. And I just love your depth of knowledge and that kind of coach approach that you take. I was like, oh, he's definitely a coach. Just, finding your why. And your why can change over time, but find your why of, why, I guess my question to listeners would be, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you create a practice that supports, I always say it makes you, just a better human, right? A better partner, a better friend, a better spouse, whatever, fill in the blank. Like, we just become better humans when we are able to control what's going on inside. And I love that you mentioned because I have a lot of clients who will say, oh, I do breathing exercises when I'm stressed out. So I love that was your example, because to me, that's that same Band-Aid of, like the Western medicine approach of, hey, we'll give you a medication for this symptom, right? To make the symptom go away. Why not prevent the panic attack if you can? Let's work on that instead of, oh, it's okay, I manage, I'll breathe when this happens, or I'll X when Y. And so, what an incredible journey you have to share with people. Tell us a little bit about how, people can get started with you. You mentioned the importance of a guide, which is what you do. How does that work? What are some of the different options?
Yeah, so right now, if you go to my website, theyieldingwarrior.com, we have an online meditation program that teaches you how to build an evolving life practice with the meditative arts. Also, if you kind of like this philosophy and are resonating with some of the things that we're talking about, my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, I'm giving away a free copy of that on the website. If you go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book, and just pay for shipping and handling, we'll send you out a free copy of the book. Also on that website, we have a teacher training program. So for those of you out there that maybe have a yoga studio or a martial arts studio, or maybe you're a life coach and you want to learn how to integrate this and be able to kind of write prescriptions with some of these different practices and help people understand how to build an evolving life practice, there's that avenue as well.
Amazing. So I'm curious in your journey, like what were your first practices and were you hooked right away?
No, not at all. I had a lot of respect for my old boxing coach, and when he told me to do the practice, I did it religiously. But for a while, I wasn't resonating with it. I wasn't making the connection. I wasn't seeing the value. And then one day, I went down to my basement and I looked up at the clock, and an hour and a half had gone by, and it felt like 15 minutes. And from that point forward, I was hooked. I had this euphoric sensation of my practice, and I was being pretty disciplined. It was about 6 months into my practice, and from that point, my whole shift changed. And I kind of moved from having boxing be my main thing to the meditative arts be my main thing, and really started following that passion and that journey. And I'll always be grateful to him for turning me onto that path.
And you were young when you started. Is it ever too late to create a practice?
I have students coming into the academy here that don't start until they're in their 80s,
Love
and
it.
from day one, you can reap the benefits. It's just if you have the discipline and make it a priority and do a little bit every day, you can get a lot out of it at any stage in life.
And it's such a gift. Like I really do believe not just to yourself and our experience of our lifetime, but everybody that we come in contact with really can feel, you talk about the energy and we really impact each other with energy. And so it is that kind of gift that keeps on giving for sure. So we're at the point in the conversation where listeners are leaning in because they know I am going to ask you for one step that they can take starting today to improve their health.
I would say to go through that list of 3 things that I told you to think about. What is your why? Understand the consistency and find yourself a guide. And if you do that and get involved today and make the move, make the commitment, it'll be one of the best things you've ever done. Just stay consistent with it. Make sure that you make it a way of life and make it part of your day. And, I like I said, I've had thousands of students through the years, and everybody that I've had come through the academy or through my online programs that listen to this advice and they do a ritual practice every day for at least a year and do some active practices and philosophical practices and integrate this into their life, they'll do this practice for the rest of their life because they'll see so many benefits from the practice that they would be crazy to stop. And so make the commitment, do this, get involved, and I promise you, you'll never regret the choice.
I love that. And I love that you start with what is your why. That's the coach in me just, that's the only way for us to create change is to understand our why and be able to call on it. Like you said, on those days when the alarm clock goes off and you think, maybe not today. And then you get up and do it anyway. So Jeff, I so appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your offer for listeners to go get your free book. I know I'm going to repeat. Usually I ask, where's the best place to find you? But I know it's the yieldingwarrior.com. It'll be in the show notes as well. But for those that just like to listen on the go, really appreciate your contribution today.
Well, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. For everyone listening, remember you can get those transcripts and show notes by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you don't already have your practice, start your practice. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.